I'm Tony Donato. I am part of the Gravure AIMCAL Alliance Committee. I am doing a couple of presentations that were done for the Gravure Basics seminar that was done in May, our virtual seminar. One of them is going to be the majority of the slides we're going to be talking about today comes from Greg D'Amico, PhD from RIT, but I'm also going to have slides that have come out of the presentation from the value and uniqueness and qualities of Gravure printing from Mark Undenning of Inland Packaging. And we're going to be going through all the market segments that goes along with Gravure. But I'm going to use Mark's presentation, a few of his slides first, just to get you sort of in tune with Gravure. Gravure is very important where it has uncompromising print quality, be able to do really strong white backgrounds. It's got outstanding opacity, and we'll talk about that more as we go along. It's able to do metallic inks, tactile and surface, able to, because of the different inline processes, you can add acrylic adhesives inline, and then also you can do different other aesthetics that needs to be done. The uniqueness of Gravure comes from the process itself. It is a recessed image. The image is an engraving that's put into the cylinder that transfers the image. And you can sort of see this little thumbnail that's onto the picture here, that it has the different size cells, because what happens is a Gravure image is usually into copper with chrome on top of it, and this has thousands of tiny little cells that are put into the image to create the image. During the printing, the ink carrier, the cylinder, it is immersed into fluid ink, and then as the roller rotates, ink fills the tiny cells, and then as it rotates around the doctor blade, which is part of the process, we'll wipe off the ink from the non-engraved areas to only allow the ink to stay in the recessed areas. So substrate is brought into contact with the image carrier, and then with the help of the impression roll pushes the substrate onto the image carrier. And at that point of contact, the ink is drawn out of the cells onto the substrate by capillary action. It has a single ink split, and this is important because Gravure gives you more ink on your transfer than like what Flexo does, because Flexo has two ink splits because the Analox roll has a fixed volume, and it puts the volume onto the plate, and then the plate has to then transfer to the substrate. So there's two ink splits. For in Gravure, in packaging Gravure and in publication Gravure, there's only a single ink split. Then going into the Gravure, what makes it unique into it is that the engraving allows the print to be unique, because Gravure is the only commercial process that controls both the area of the ink coverage and the ink film thickness in the same print cylinder. In the case of Flexo, you have to have a different Analox roll for the different amount of volume ink that you need. But in the case of the Gravure, you can get it all on the same, so you can get a vignette and everything right off the same cylinder. So this is very important in achieving the engraving in recessed cells. Varies the area, varies the volume, and both in the single cylinder. This way that the graphics quality can be better than what you're going to be able to get in other processes, so you can get more photographic type quality that come out of the Gravure printing. The ability to change the film thickness and the dot size on the same cylinder, this helps be able to get the number of inline on how many print stations is necessary to be able to get the proper registration and your resolution. In the strengths of your cylinders, one of the things is thermographic inks. With thermochromatic inks, you can see on this Coors label that was done a few years back, to where when you put it down into the ice, as it gets colder, it changes colors with the ink. This is a strong part of Gravure. This actual label was printed by Inland. One of the unique things with Gravure, because of the single ink split, you can really put down the amount of white ink down to be able to get your opacity way up there, so that way the opacity is much stronger. Flexo over the years has done a lot of improvements to improve its opacity, but it's not been able to compare directly to Gravure. Tactile images and inks, so that way you can have a raised surface, and then also metallics are very important. The other thing that Gravure can be configured to is that it can be printed with solvent-based laminations or cold seal, all in line. So this is very important in food and snack packaging. Aluminum foil printing and heat seal used in blister packs, in pharmaceutical, and paperboard, carton, high quality images, and utilizes finishing and die cutting and sheeter. So that way this is done with tobacco cartons and other cartons. And then with the registration control, you'll be able to get some high quality on your labels. I'm moving now into Greg D'Amico's presentations, his imaging quality, and he looked at this over on what is the parts of Gravure that helps it in its segments. So this is sort of ties in together with Mark Glendining's presentation. So the ability to reproduce fine details, the best technology for long runs. This is something that's very important because of the great consistency that it has, because of, again, is that you're having your quality, your ink quality and your line screen can be varied all on the same cylinder in your engraving. So the substrates capability is very strong in Gravure. You can pretty well do anything with the exception of corrugated, because the issue is being able to get the capillary action. You have to have the impression roll pushing substrate into the print cylinder. So this is crushing the pressure. So if you were trying to print directly on the corrugated, that would be a problem. But corrugated can also be printed in what they call preprint form. So you can print on the outside of the corrugated before you ever print, before you make it into corrugated. And then the Gravure has a tendency to have a very high cost machine because of the size of them. And you'll see we got some pictures coming up to show you some of the presses, and also at higher cost on the image form. But what happens is if you get to attend the rest of the conference, you're going to find that there are breakthroughs coming through from a couple of different companies that are working on trying to pull the costs down and get away from the hexavalent chrome. So going on with the market segments, packaging is a very big part of the market segment. It's the largest growing part of the segment. And as you can see, is that more SKUs come into the grocery stores. So that also is one of the big places where packaging is done, and flexible packaging especially. And then with publication, unfortunately, over the years, publication, because of the internet, has decreased, where at one time was a very strong part of the Gravure market segment, but is much smaller now because of the internet and not as much need for everybody having their own catalogs in their own personal house. Now they can just go online to be able to review products. So this eliminated a lot of product Gravure, but it's still, or publication Gravure, but it's still an important part of the product market segments. Product market segment is the next portion, and this goes into end use with floor covering or objects that you're actually printing on the object itself that is used instead of the package. And also this is big on even printing on the candies or on confections for like your little small 4 and 6 type that's on pills, and then on other precision coatings, window tints, clear films, on optical clear coating. This is very important. It's put on products like televisions to be able to have people touch them, so that way they're not going to be able to damage the actual screen part. Security printing, we'll go into this, and electronics. So we're going to cover more of these details as we go along. Packaging Gravure, this is a very important part of the marketplace of the segments. Going into the flexible packaging, we touched a little bit about it. This is where also cold seal is used, especially for like candy packages, like with the M&M packages or this mounds that are showed here, and then labels, and then folding cartons. So you can get tactile, and you can get some very brilliance with different types on your folding cartons. Also in the packaging, you have two primary markets. You got the folding, you got the flexible packaging side, which wrappers and cookie wrappers, trays, so on and so forth, that goes along with wraparound labels. But also in folding cartons is very important with perfumes and hair quality. And the importance of being able, the intensity of the colors and also the tactile side are very important for when you get in with hair care products and other products that are in the pharmacies and in women's hair care products. So typical Gravure flexible packaging presses, they're less than 60 inches in width. They can run very fast, 1,800 feet a minute. This is just sort of a picture here of an 8-color on a Cerruti press that is for a packaging press. We also have in the folding carton presses, as you can see, this one I think has either 10 or 12 print stations. And in line, this will be able to add more other features that can be done. And these, again, a little bit under 60 inches, 1,300 feet a minute. This BOPS press is a very popular press and seems to be growing. And with your folding cartons, with a publication gravure, magazines and supplements. And as I said earlier, it's not as big as it once was. It's still very important because you still get high quality magazines are still printed gravure. It's just that with sustainability, there's less and less push on magazines because you don't want to have leftover ones that don't sell. So there's more and more moving to online, but still, this is an important segment of the gravure market. Publication gravure can go very fast on these machines. Not as many of them around that there once was, but they're also the longest life on the print form. So because it's engraved into cylinders, we've talked about it before, and it's still very strong in certain parts of the world, but not as strong as it once was. On examples for gravure presses for the publication gravure, you can see that 121 inches and 3 meters, that they're over twice as wide as what you have on packaging. They also can have inline. One of the nice things with inline, they can have stitching, trimming, gluing, perforation, add-on cards, and that's one of the big advantages of it. And that is also an advantage in the other segments also. Product gravure is a continuous growing part of it. It's being a lot of it reshored now. So what's happening is a large amount of this was overseas. It's starting to come back. The DIY part of everybody taking care of their house, and a lot of it was done during the pandemic over this last year. Floor covering has been very big. Gift wrap and wall covering, wallpaper. Wallpaper is a very critical part. It's to be done with gravure because you have to get that 22 inches. The registration has to match across it. So that way when you go one stripe down the wall to the next, you get into the pharmaceutical medical capsules and, windshield tinting, building tinting, very important part of it. Automotive trim and wood grains, laminating in imitation veneers, shower curtains, and also it's been an important part going into it is pool liners. So going into product technology, printing technologies that you can sort of see, here's a nice chart that sort of gives you where all the different actions go. And we've talked about a lot of this before, but gravure pretty well hits over all of the product gravure side. Why is it gravure in product printing? It's because of consistency, lot to lot. This is very important when you talk about color control, when you deal with the water-based ink people, that you'll see that what goes on with product gravure, especially on the floor coverings, is that they have to have their delta E's much lower than you have in a lot of other segments because their delta E's have to go into the point where they have to have replacement floor tiles and things that, if that way you have a damage in your house and you need to replace them up to 10 years, they have to match in their color. So that way you can't see that there's a big difference between one to the next. And also the importance with product gravures, you can take and put coatings on. So it's very popular to get scuff resistance and coatings. I put in EV coatings and other coatings that go up on top. So that's all an important part up to it. So printed designs, printed onto plastic. They're also, less durable than on the linoleum. But there's also a lot of this printing that goes on. It's all in high volumes, and it's on protective coating, as I said a minute ago, with the EV coatings or UV overcoats to be able to get scuff resistance. Wall coverings, premium wall coverings. Years ago, there was a small shop out in Florida that does custom special wallpapers, and one of the things that they did was that they had a reputation. They did all the wallpaper that was done for the White House. So every time a new president came in and they redid the wallpaper to their design, they were all printed by gravure that went into the White House. Going into rigid laminates, this is one of the other things that can be done. You can print onto flexible that is taken then and it's laminated onto a rigid piece. But there's also the capability, as you can see with veneers, very large amount of all of the wood grain that you'll see inside of a mobile home. That's all done, a lot of that's done by gravure. It's also with countertops. Formica, we actually have a designer for Formica that's going to be talking on another presentation on the gravure tracks in the next couple of days. Countertops are all very important, and because of all the multiple layers that are going onto it, again, to be able to give them the strength and the decor layer that they need. Product gravure industrial products that you're going to have films, window tints, also tints that goes into all these big high rises, cigarette filters. That's done with a special chemical that the burn resistance to be able to have onto it. Pills and candies, imported, done with gravure. Security printing. Security printing is another important part. You can have the microtext, you can have the magnetic inks, you can have in registration lamination, and this is used for anything from tax stamps to regular stamps, postal stamps, a lot of different banknotes. There's many different things that are done with this. And hybrid printing process is one of the other advantages of the inline system of going on with gravure. Electronics is one part that electronics manufacturers are seeing that the gravure process is a good process that they can add in, especially when they're trying to move to go inline printing to go roll to roll instead of going onto a screen printing, which is sheet fed, but this is going to roll. So you're starting to see it into lighting and solar cells, batteries, and it's going to be in a hybrid state. It isn't going to do everything. It's going to do part of what it does the best. So this is an example that ninth information came from Ninth Degree Technologies, and they have in their lab, they have a press that actually has gravure, flexo, screen, slot die, knife overcoating. And on the right-hand side, you can see here's where they've actually printed lighting. So this is LED lighting that they're able to print, and they do this with gravure as part of their process. And you can see that they test it at 5 rows at a time. So recap of it, the image quality, the ability to reproduce fine details, exceptional rich and chromatic colors. So that's very important. Best in technology for long runs. Substrate capability pretty well across the whole gamut, from folding carton stock to plastic films to foils to labels to paper. So you can pretty well do all the way through. So gravure is and always has been a very important printing process that is done, and as that expands over to its marketplace, so it goes across so many different parts of the market, to where it's in packaging, publication, product, and so you can see from this, and we hope that you will enjoy the other parts of the segments that we have coming up with the fundamentals. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope this is a helpful recording to you. Thank you.